I just finished watching Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, and guys, honestly, very different from the other Planet of the Apes movies, but I loved it just as much, well, almost as much. It doesn't really hit the same without Caesar, but still, it was a fantastic movie, and today I'm going to go through with it. I'm going to go through the plot, I'm going to take my time, talk about what I liked about the movie, if there's anything that I didn't like in the movie, although I don't think there's anything that I didn't necessarily like. I'm just going to talk about the movie, guys. We're going to get into it, and this is going to be a spoiler review, so here's your chance. Click off the video. I know it's been out for a little while now, but just want to give that little bit of a heads up. Hello everybody and welcome back to another video. If you are new here, my name is Kyle. I am your guy with too many YouTube channels. Let's talk about Planet of the Apes. So I want to start off with, first of all, I thought this movie was going to be like those really, really old movies. I haven't watched the old Planet of the Apes movies. I'm talking about the ones from like when my parents were watching movies. Because of course, the Rise of the Planet of the Apes, Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, and War of Planet of the Apes were kind of prequels to what, like, I don't even know when it was out, like in the 60s or 70s or something like that. Anyways, it was a prequel to those movies because in those movies, these astronauts from space got lost in space and then they came down. Plus, in Rise of the Planet of the Apes, that was teased. Like the whole lost in space thing, I guess it was just kind of a shout out to the other movies, really, but it doesn't really matter. I went into this movie thinking that's what it was about. These humans are going to come back to realize that, hey, what happened to our planet? Why are apes running it? What's going on with people? They can't speak. But it wasn't about that at all. So I don't know if because we know they're continuing the saga, right? I don't know if we're going to get into that, which I would imagine we're going to do that. But then again, we also realize that this movie took place generations after Caesar's death. So maybe those astronauts would be dead unless they do like that typical thing they do in movies where, oh my God, my body was freezed for so long. We didn't know what to do, so we freezed our bodies, and then we happen to hit this planet. We happen to get this distress call, and we happen to make our way back to Earth, and oh my God, it's this whole Captain America type thing, right? So I thought that's where the movie was going. So I was kind of pleasantly surprised that I didn't know what to expect of this movie, and I only saw the teaser trailers. I actually, for some reason, didn't even watch a full trailer for this movie. But anyways, actually diving into the movie now. So we are brought to the beginning of the movie, and of course, Caesar is being cremated. He is officially dead. I thought that I was really confused at the beginning because I knew this took place like way after Caesar's death, but I'm like, oh my God, that's Caesar. But they didn't spend time on that. They just said that they just showed that his son was watching Caesar, right? And we are brought to this new generations later on, this new tribe of apes, and it's about Noah and his two friends, well, mostly about an ape called Noah. Noah is from a falcon clan where apes have realized that they can use falcons to really get their food because they've been controlling them somehow by singing to them, and that's been pretty much the whole point of it. And it's this like whole coming of age ceremony thing that they're having where we're brought to Noah's age, and it's this whole new clan. First I thought Noah was a descendant of Caesar because he actually looked like blue a little bit, and I was waiting for them to mention Caesar somehow, but we're going to get into that because Caesar's mentioned, and it's very, very strange. So we also learn at the beginning of the movie that humans have become pretty much what apes were. They can't speak anymore. The virus really got to them, and they're kind of scavengers. They look at the humans like pests, and I found it very, very, very interesting. As soon as we're brought through this world too, and what's funny is when I was watching the movie, my wife pointed out to me, I didn't even realize half the stuff they were climbing were old buildings. So then when I really started paying attention to how, you ever watch those old videos on YouTube when they used to be popular, where it's like, what would happen if the earth stopped spinning, you know, that kind of stuff. And then the vegetation would always come back. They would overtake the buildings. Things would start to crumble. So I found it fascinating the way the movie handled that. You can always tell with these Planet of the Apes movies, there's so much love and care put into it. So I thought just the landscape in general was beautiful. But anyways, diving into the actual movie. So Noah and his two other friends are getting ready for this coming of age thing where they're going to bond with their birds. So they need to get eggs from these birds. And I guess the higher you climb, I don't know if they really mentioned it why, but the higher you climb up, the more special your egg is. Or maybe it's just the bigger bird. I don't really know, to be honest with you, but there was a little bit of a hassle he had with one of his friends because like, oh my God, we got to leave one egg in the nest. That's what's right to do. But it's really not right to steal any eggs ever. So they have this hard climb. They almost fall. But at the end of the day, Noah ended up climbing to the top of the mountain where I don't know if no ape has gone before, but it was a very, very impressive feat compared to the other apes. So they started off the movie really well. We're introduced to these new characters, and you actually already kind of like Noah, to be honest with you. Although I get mixed feelings throughout Noah through the entire movie because Caesar's a very difficult character to live up to for a main character, right? And Noah's just kind of this bitter ape who has to learn compassion and all that stuff, which I found interesting, to be honest with you, but he obviously wasn't nearly as likable as Caesar. But anyways, after they get home, Noah ends up having a nice conversation with his dad. His dad ends up being proud of him. We're introduced to his mother and their kind of roles in the village, and the dad is the master of eagles, the master of birds. He sings to them, and we're demonstrated and like all the birds come to him. He has a whole bird cage type thing, and he's impressed with Noah because Noah climbed to the top of the mountain. Again, I don't know if they actually mentioned why or if it's actually just slipping my mind, but it doesn't really matter. So we have a nice moment here and there, but that night, Noah ends up finding a human, and this is the first time we're introduced to a human in this new generation, or the generations past Caesar's age, because again, they're looked at as pests. They're looked at as like a little rat coming in to just get some food and run out, right? And it's this new girl who we didn't know until, of course, later on that actually wasn't just a pest. It's very, very cool the way they did that, the different dynamic between the apes. So Noah ends up having a little bit of a tussle with this new human, and the egg ends up getting cracked. And of course, it was a very, very important moment because the coming to age thing, or the whole bonding thing, was the next day. And his friends were like, okay, we'll wait for you. But Noah wanted the ceremony to be tomorrow, so he went out to go have another climb and get a new egg. But of course, what happens is, while he's searching for that egg, he runs into something very strange, and it's an attack on apes. And we're brought to these brand new apes, right? And what happens with Noah is Noah accidentally, of course, with his horse, leaving it out in the open, leads these apes, and it was a little bit difficult to tell what they wanted at first, but obviously there was an attack there. They were having these electric weapons, which were very strange for apes. Noah seemed very weirded out by it, so they end up following the horse back, and these new apes completely annihilate the new Eagle clan, and it's all Noah's fault. It's all Noah's fault. We don't know why they were there, but it ended up getting destroyed because of Noah. He felt absolutely horrible. They end up having a little bit of a tussle. Apes are dying. Apes are being captured, and after a little bit of a fight at the top, after freeing a bunch of birds, the new raider ended up actually killing Noah's father, and it's this really, really horrible scene because afterwards, after watching all these people die and what seemed to be his mother and all of his friends, and Noah being the only survivor, we didn't know this until, or we thought this until later on in the movie. It was a really, really heartfelt thing for Noah to go through, and this is the birth of Noah being angry, bitter, sad, angry at the human, angry at different apes, kind of wanting vengeance, and you can kind of see him having a little bit of a cobra-ish instinct in him, maybe, because of course he's starting to blame humans, and we see this continuing on with the movie. So Noah, being alone, ends up burying his father and ends up actually journeying into the valley, and they didn't really say why. I don't think that why they never passed through the tunnel into the new valley, but he ends up going there anyways. I don't know if he was searching for vengeance, searching for other apes, but he meets this brand new ape named Raka, and they didn't mention it, but I'm almost sure this is a descendant of Maurice because of the kindness he was showing, the compassion that he was showing, the dedication to following Caesar's teachings. And this is where, honestly, guys, the movie really shined for me because I found it fascinating the way they handled all of this. This is exactly like, I know this is a far-fetched thing to happen, but if this whole virus thing and apes rising up thing, the apes getting smart through a drug thing actually happened, this is what would happen because they're in all of these old buildings, they're finding old telescopes, the vegetation is growing everywhere, and Raka is bringing up books to this person. Well, I jumped the gun a little bit because Noah ends up falling into a trap that Raka made, and Raka's very nice to him. We figure out that these apes with the masks are kind of bad guys. Noah has to explain that he's not them. They killed his father, and Raka, Maurice, being the nice guy that he is, just goes, I'm Raka, how are you? And they ended up bonding a little bit. Noah's a little bit angry, understandably so. He's bitter. His father just died, right? But Raka was showing him about the followings of Caesar, and I completely forgot to mention the Caesar part. I'm sorry, guys. So during that raid, of course, you guys have all watched the movie. That one leader raider ended up killing everybody and saying, for Caesar. And then I was sitting back like, okay, well, that's wrong. We knew that there was something kind of messed up there. It's not difficult to dissect, but once we meet Raka just kind of, shameful, those apes, shameful. They twist the words of Caesar and don't follow it because he explains to Noah the apes together strong and the compassion for humans and the old legends of Caesar, which again, I found interesting how it was kind of twisted and turned where it's like, legend has it that Caesar was actually raised by humans, and he was showing Noah that humans and apes can coexist, show some compassion, and he brought out books, and apes lost the ability to read, which is, again, interesting. He goes, these symbols, they actually mean something. This is a way to store information in the time of Caesar, and they kept referring to things as the time of Caesar, and I found it, again, very, very fascinating the way they handle it. So the two end up going on a little bit of a journey together. Raka is a very, very cool orangutan who is just loving life. He lives by Caesar's code, and he's the only one to continue on with the code of Caesar. The apes together strong, ape not kill ape, and just living compassionate, just, showing mercy. And this is where they notice that they're being followed by that same human scavenger, the same human girl. And while there was a couple instances where Noah wanted to just, hey, like, get out of here. It's like shooing away a pest. That's the way we kept talking about it. I don't remember if Noah actually mentioned that the human was a pest, but that's how he was treating it. And Raka ends up going, hey, these humans, they get cold. Offer them your blanket. Noah didn't want to offer the blanket, but reluctantly he did. And Raka ended up naming the human Nova and said, that's what we name all of them. I don't know why. And somehow it got lost in translation too, which had to be figured out, was Noah was calling the humans Echo and Raka was calling them humans as they were, right? So they end up bringing the human girl along with them, and Raka, after a little bit, kind of gets happy with Noah because he's showing a little bit of compassion for the human girl. He's like, well, she can come, but she's slow, you know? Just, he's getting there. He's a good person, Noah, right? He's just a little bit angry. He's a little bit bitter. So after that, they end up finding horses with stripes, along with a bunch of other humans. But while looking at the humans and while leaving Nova with the humans, that same raider group of apes comes and attacks everybody and is capturing them, and for some reason took interest in Nova. I don't really know why, if they were looking for a girl that showed a little bit of more intelligence, and that's something that Raka was able to see, but they end up having a fight. They end up running away, and there's this really cool scene where the human girl is sitting in the grass, and Noah, of all people, decides to come back and a rescuer because Raka couldn't. Noah had the horse. And while everybody was looking for her, she stood up and she spoke. And you had this very, very different moment. And it's funny that she yelled Noah instead of no. It actually sounded no, because you had that moment where Caesar finally spoke, where he's like, no! But this is the thing. This is the problem with Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, where I loved it. I thought it was a great movie. Honestly, I give it a 10 out of 10, but it doesn't have that same hit that the things like Caesar had. Living up to a character like Caesar is so difficult, because that same thing where she spoke. The virus is here. How is she speaking? Humans lost their ability to speak ages ago, generations ago, and this one spoke. It's supposed to be this big grand moment, but it just didn't hit the same as Caesar. So I actually like chuckled a little bit, because I'm like, that's like kind of the same thing that Caesar did, but it wasn't this impactful moment, the one that the movie kind of wanted to be. So she ended up speaking. She ended up yelling Noah's name. Noah ends up saving the day. They kind of ride off to the sunset, and this is where Nova ended up. They end up, like, of course, at the campground together, like this little campfire that they ended up creating. They ran away from the people. They abandoned their horses. They wanted the raiders to kind of chase them away, and they kind of had the same thing they were going for in Rise of the Planet of the Apes, where Noah was talking to Raka and was like, hey, that human spoke. And this is where the human ends up revealing that her name is Mai, or May. I can't remember if it was Mai or May. I'm sorry, guys. I literally just watched a movie and I can't remember. And I was kind of sitting here like, okay, well, why weren't you speaking this entire time? Because she was acting like a little animal, like a little rat, like a little dog following around, right? Like, and she was like you're like staying away like a broken down animal, right? But she said that her mother taught her to be silent for her safety. So I guess that I can get away with that. I just don't really understand it. You can tell that these apes are good apes. You can trust them, right? But then again, she might just be stupid. But they also said that she was intelligent compared to all the other humans. So I don't know. But they ended up revealing that the raiders, or May ended up revealing that the raiders took everybody to this one camp, and then they needed to go to the camp because I don't know if Noah wanted to search for his mother, or they just ended up going on a rescue mission for the Eagle Clan in general. But they end up finding this bridge. They get caught, and this is unfortunately where Raka ends up dying, and that really, it didn't upset me, of course, but I was really sad that when Raka died, because I liked him a lot. He was a lot better than Maurice. I loved the way he was walking through life so positively, loving animals, loving to learn. Like, he was actually, in my opinion at least, he was the best character in the entire film. I loved him, and I wish he stuck around. I would have liked to see him keep like sticking around throughout the entire movie, is kind of teaching the way of Caesar. But of course, that's kind of being passed down to Noah. So like I said, he ended up dying. He ended up drowning because he had to save May, and Noah and May end up being taken prisoners, and they're brought back to this new ape settlement. When I saw this, I was like, seriously? Another concentration camp? Like, what are we doing? We're watching the same movie over here, but they made it a little bit different. I like the way that they handled this entire movie. Like, it felt different enough where I was still really excited to see, and you could see, like, while crossing that bridge too, they still had the crucifixion things that they used in War of the Planet of the Apes. So I was like, oh god, oh boy, are we gonna start to see another Caesar on a cross moment, just getting put by water in the wind? You know, I was like, what are we gonna see here, man? But it's a lot different the way the movie turned out, of course. Anyways, when they're brought to this settlement, Noah is then reunited with his friends and his mother, and it's this really cool moment because I don't know if they mentioned it, but Noah definitely didn't know that they were alive, and vice versa, and I didn't know if they were alive. So it was a really heartwarming moment because, of course, the mother was this really wholesome mother, just loved her son, right? And they had this really, really nice moment. But we figure out very quickly that everybody's being enslaved, and this new Proximus Caesar is like I don't know if he called himself a descendant of Caesar or if he just claimed to be the new Caesar because he had this big speech. But I'm jumping the gun a little bit because we figure out that, of course, everybody is being forced to work because there is a big vault containing human technology so the apes can learn, so the apes can have instant evolution. And this is where Proximus, and we learned this because Proximus ended up inviting May and Noah to dinner, and he explained this all. And he also took Noah aside and said, you can never trust a human, which, to be honest with it, is very true, and it can kind of be shown at the end of the movie. You can't trust a human. I will die on this hill, man. Koba is the true hero of Planet of the Apes, the fallen hero that nobody talks about, because Koba didn't want anybody to have power. And if the humans never got power, look what wouldn't have happened. Caesar wouldn't be dead. Everybody would be just living happily ever after. The apes could have, if they needed to, wiped out the humans if they decided to attack. But man, Caesar loved too much, man. Koba was the true fallen hero of the Planet of the Apes. So it was a little bit interesting how you kind of have the same idea with Proximus Caesar talking to Noah and saying, hey, don't trust this May girl. She has her own agenda. You can't trust humans. You can never trust a human. All they bring is trouble. And it's entirely true, but it seems like Proximus Caesar is just using Noah May and the other old guy that I can't remember his name to have their intelligence to end up opening the vault because May is smarter than everybody. I don't really understand how they figured that out, but it turns out she was really small, really smart. But after a little bit of thinking, because Noah isn't sure whether or not to trust her, because, of course, he has some thoughts put in his head right now, Noah ends up confronting May, and he demands the truth. They end up figuring out that there is a book. There's a book that May described that could restore speech to humans. I don't know what that book could be. I don't know if it's a dictionary. But then again, if nobody can read, how can you figure out a dictionary? If nobody can speak, how would a dictionary help? Or if it's just this false belief that May has, or if she was even lying, I don't know. And Proximus Caesar, I don't know where he got the idea too, because he said that there's instant evolution in the vault. I don't know if they're talking about a book. I don't know if he actually believes, like, hey, snap your fingers, evolution is here. I don't know about any of that, but it was a little bit vague. Regardless, nobody, the savior to humanity or the apes weren't in the vault. Don't really get it, but regardless. So Noah ends up agreeing to help May. They're going to destroy the vault. And there's a little bit of a teaser because he asks if water can destroy whatever's in it. So, of course, you can see that they're going to plan to have a bomb detonate and have the water from the ocean go into the vault, which I saw coming from a mile away. I don't know if they wanted to make it. I didn't know. I wasn't really expecting a plot twist or anything, but it doesn't really matter. So they spend the night kind of all being together. The three apes are kind of reunited. They follow the human, and they start planting bombs everywhere. And of course, May turns out to be a very, very intelligent human because she's figuring out how to detonate bombs from the little bit of resources that they have over here, and the apes are helping them. Everybody seems to be working together, but then they run into the old guy on the bridge. And the old guy just talks about skinning the ape alive, killing people, and he's going to go back and tell Proximus Caesar. So May ends up strangling him to death. Rear naked choke. I will say, horrible technique for a rear naked choke. It's not like this. It's not like this. It's like this, May. It's like this. This is how you do a rear naked choke, May. And I can't help but do that, man. If you guys don't know, if you don't follow any of my other channels, I have an extensive background in martial arts. So every single time I watch a movie and then I see, well, first of all, a little girl overpowering a man, you can get away with it because he seemed a little bit old, but that's just doesn't do it for me. And the other times is just where their punches are just so horrible. Their jiu-jitsu is so horrible. I can't help but end up critiquing it. I ended up leaning over to my wife and like, poor technique. And she just ended up strangling him. They threw him into the ocean and continue on with their mission. But then we move on to the interesting part because they end up going around, they end up having a climb, and Noah learns the word shit. They end up actually getting into the vault, and I didn't know what the vault was at first. I thought it was a prison. My wife thought it was a prison. I don't remember if she mentioned it to me or if I thought at first. Doesn't really matter, but ended up being a weapons facility. It's at the very least, it seemed like. So the weird thing for me is May's book ended up being a satellite deciphering key. I don't know if that's the book she was talking about. I think it is. So was she lying to the apes? And I'm going to get into it a little bit because I was left a little bit confused by the end of the movie, and I would love for anybody to clear that up down below. But while May is figuring out and she's not finding a book, the apes found books, and the apes found books, which is a children's book about humans looking at monkeys in cages at a zoo. And that's bad, and I thought they were going to turn on May, but they ended up still going with May. They explore the bunker a little bit more. They exit the bunker, and when they go to open the door, because they're like, okay, you have to move quickly because we're going to detonate the bombs, Proximus is waiting right outside with his mother, and it is a very, very bad situation until May ends up saving the day and shooting the ape that ended up holding Noah's mother. And this is where Proximus says, you can go, May. You can go. And instead of just going peacefully, she ends up not wanting apes to get any of the technology because she's team human, or I can't let them have anything that's in there. And she decides to detonate the thing anyways, which immediately starts flooding the vault. A lot of apes started running inside the vault while May ended up fleeing. There's this horrible, horrible situation where all the apes are dying. It's very sad to see, but of course, Noah and his 3 friends know the way out. They barely make it out. A lot of apes die. Noah ends up having a face-off with that ape that killed his father at the beginning of the movie. And this is where I found it interesting because Noah ended up weaving around the entire thing, so the big ape couldn't get through the bars and he ended up drowning. I thought for a second that Noah was going to go back and save this ape because of all of the teachings of Caesar that he now seems to be following a little bit. And you could see it throughout the movie. I didn't really mention it, but you could tell like Noah was like, that's not Caesar. That's not what Caesar would want, right? He's kind of understanding the teachings of Caesar and understanding that it helps him in his life. So I thought because they were really showing him kind of doing this, like reaching and having his hand out, I thought that he was going to save the day, but the hand just slipped into the water. I'm like, yes, there we go. There we go, Noah. Awesome job, Noah. But they end up escaping the bunker a little bit. They have one final face-off with Proximus Caesar. All of the apes are submitting to the alpha male, and he's just beating on Noah. And Noah has this really, really awesome moment. And this is something that I didn't talk about, too, because Noah spent a little bit of the movie not being able to sing like his father. The birds were just pecking him, but he ended up singing the tune, being confident in himself, rising up and getting all of the birds to just attack Proximus Caesar, and the Eagle clan just kind of chanting back at him. Nobody was submitting to him anymore. And it was this really cool moment because the birds end up dropping him off a cliff, and everybody can kind of live happily ever after in that because they all end up going home after that, right? But then we move on to the end of the movie, and this is where I was a little bit confused through it, but no, I wasn't really confused. I just get a little bit confused on May's motives, okay? So they end up returning and rebuilding the home. Everybody's okay. And what's funny is it's cool the landscape that they all have, right? So May ends up coming to find Noah and she says goodbye. The problem is she explains why she ended up destroying the bunker, and that was because she didn't want apes to have human created weapons. But that implies and Noah kind of argued back that, okay, well, humans have weapons and technology. What belongs to the apes? Do humans just want to take over the world? Humans won't stop until they take over the world. Koba would have stopped it, by the way. Koba, the true fallen hero of the Planet of the Apes. So the problem is they end up not really arguing a little bit. They just bring up those points, and what's asked is, can humans and apes ever coexist? No, because humans will never have that. Humans will never, ever, ever have that. What I was a little bit confused about is because while May was talking to Noah, she had a gun behind her back. That same gun. I don't know if she even liked Noah, if she was using Noah, if she has a bigger mission. I don't know exactly what May's motive was. Of course, she had a mission, right? She had a mission. We know that. But does she have a heart? Does she like Noah? Was she just going along for the ride just to kind of get what she wants? That's kind of where I'm at with it. That's where I don't really understand. So After that, Noah ends up taking the girl that he ends up liking, but nothing ever came from it, to a telescope he ended up finding on his journey, which, again, I don't think I touched on that, but another thing that was fascinating, they end up figuring how to use it, and May ends up traveling to a settlement base, which is a little bit underground. It's isolated from humanity. Everybody's, like, at least when they went outside, they were wearing kind of hazmat suit, and May ends up delivering the key to the satellite. Humans end up making contact with other humans, and I don't remember where they said. I don't remember if they said it was Indiana or something like that. It didn't really matter. But humans officially activated the satellites, and they had connection with each other. I don't know where this is going. I think that humans are going to fight back against the apes. Humans are getting their technology. Look what happened last time when humans ended up getting their technology. War broke out. I don't care what Koba did. Koba, the true fallen hero of the Planet of the Apes franchise. I'm interested to see where this is going to go, and I'm interested to see if they're going to have the astronauts come down, or if they're just abandoning that storyline, or if it's going to be another trilogy after this one. Regardless, I gave the movie a 10 out of 10. I loved the journey. I thought it was fascinating the way they handled the generations after, how humans and the viruses ended up being. I loved watching the vegetation and the scenery. I loved the story of Noah. I loved his coming to age story. I loved the teachings of Caesar, and I found it fascinating, again, how the legend of Caesar has lived on through generations, because, of course, things are going to kind of get messed up in translation after all of this time, right? I loved it. Absolutely loved it. I cannot wait for the next movie, guys. Let me know what you thought about it down below. Thank you very, very much for watching. On the screen right now, if you're interested, I took a look at and reviewed Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, which you can find down here, and War of the Planet of the Apes, which is up here. You can check out one of those videos if you want to continue watching my Planet of the Apes series, guys. I will see you over there. Take care.